Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6 o'clock. My name is Jason Parent. I am a resident of Caribou and the Executive Director of the Aroostook County Action Program. And I am your moderator for this evening's Candidates Forum for the 7 candidates vying for Caribou City Council on the Tuesday, November 7th ballot. This evening we will have 5 of our 7 candidates actively participating in this evening's exchange. One of our candidates will make a prepared statement at the beginning here in just a moment, and another one of our candidates who was unable to be with us this evening, I have a prepared opening and closing statement that I will read on her behalf. This evening, each candidate will be allowed to read a prepared statement, an opening statement, not to exceed 2 minutes. They will also have a closing statement that will not exceed 2 minutes as well. Our candidates that are actively participating are seated in alphabetical order. They include Gary Aiken, Mark Gaughan, Hugh Kirkpatrick, Jody Smith, and Kevin St. Pierre. Following the opening statements, we will begin the question process, again proceeding in alphabetical order. This time, Mr. Gaughan will respond first to question number 1, followed by Mr. Kirkpatrick, and so on, ending that time with Mr. Aiken. Mr. Kirkpatrick will be the first to respond to question number 2, followed by Mr. Smith, and again so on. If time allows, and we actually do have 3 questions that have been added in addition to the ones that were submitted in advance from individuals who either submitted them on Facebook in the past few hours or who were here this evening with us. Before we begin the opening statements, which again will be timed, I will let you know that each candidate will be allowed those 2 minutes to answer. The official timer, Christina Kane Gibson, will hold up a yellow card an orange card when 30 seconds remains, and a pink card when time is up. So those will be your timing cues. We ask that you please finish your thoughts promptly, especially when the pink card goes up. Before we begin with the opening statements, both the one that was prepared in advance of this evening from the candidate unable to be here, I will ask that our 7th candidate on the ballot, Sarah McLean, has a statement she would like to make before we begin the forum.
Yes, my name is Sarah McLean, and I live in Caribou, and I'm a psychotherapist. I have a private practice, and this summer I was very gung-ho, and I've been thinking about running for city council for a while, and I thought I'm going to do it. And then over the summer I also took on some other commitments, and unfortunately before I really thought things through to really consider to say, oh well, I don't know if I can commit to city council, I couldn't get my name off of the ballot, and so unfortunately I'm not really actively running any longer. And for me, kind of being a McLean is, doing the right thing. And I thought the right thing would be to come today and let people know to basically not vote for me because, I don't have the time to commit to being on city council. So that's my summary is I'm Sarah McLean, and don't vote for me for city council.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We understand
yes,
you will be leaving us at this point. Thank you very much. Before beginning the opening statements for the candidates who are present with us this evening, I would read the following statement from candidate Nicole Cody, who is running and who is actively running for a seat. Nicole says, please accept my apologies for not being able to attend this candidates forum. I am currently in Atlanta, Georgia at a National Job Corps conference as I was selected to participate on a design team for the future of Job Corps. I am honored to have served on your city council for the past 7 months. After appointment, I was elected in June to fulfill the remainder of the vacated term expiring December 31st, 2017. I have a passion to be part of the extraordinary and innovative initiatives happening and evolving in our great city of Caribou. Serving our community has provided me an opportunity to learn what your needs are. I have been able to extend my government experience during my time on the council. Caribou is my hometown. Throughout my travels with an active duty Air Force husband, I have reaffirmed there is no better place to raise our family than the great city of Caribou. Caribou cares about the needs of our citizens and our future. I am committed to serving all residents of Caribou. We have diverse needs. We have work to do. We are tasked with making our city a place that citizens feel supported and new residents feel a part of our community. I look forward to serving you as a city councilor and ask for your support and vote. This opportunity will allow me to provide you exceptional support and service. I will ensure that taxes are used for the greater good of the community and handled responsibly. Again, my apologies for not being able to attend the forum. I ask for your support. This was the prepared statement by Nicole Cody. And so with that prepared statement out of the way, we will begin our opening statements with Mayor Akin.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Christina and Jason for putting this forum together tonight. And I'd like to thank Jason for volunteering. You are a volunteer. We're not paying you or anything?
I am a volunteer.
You're not in the budget. So.
I'm not.
Anyway, I would like to thank you all on behalf of all of us that for taking the time to do this, because I think it's certainly worthwhile. As far as an opening statement, my name is Gary Akin, and I've lived in Caribou for 19 years. I've served on City Council for 6 years now. The last 5 as mayor and the council chair. My background is in business. I served probably 28 years for a couple of companies in senior management roles. I've dealt with budgets in excess of $100 million a year. Been in large negotiation contracts worth millions of dollars a year. And when I retired, I never really had any thoughts about being involved with government, but decided that, we wanted to stay in Caribou, and we'd already determined that, and maybe I could be of some help and in working with the city and trying to make things a little better for all of the citizens. So I decided to run, and I guess my feelings haven't changed. That's why I've stayed on, and probably and hopefully I will continue to stay on. So.
Thank you, Mayor Akin. We will now move on to opening statements from Mr. Mark Gaughan.
Thank you, Jason, and also thank you very much, folks, for putting on the forum. I'd also like to thank the other candidates for running. Always makes for an interesting election when you have more people on the ballot than there are positions. My name is Mark Gaughan, along with my wife Gloria and our 3 daughters and son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. We own and operate Gaughan's Berry Farm on the way to Fort Fairfield, on the Fort Fairfield Road. We've been at it for 41 years. We've taken many turns, of course, on this journey. Bought and paid for the farm twice. We're now on the 3rd time around. So, and I dare say that before it's over, we'll be in the same boat again. We'll never stop reinventing ourselves. We are nowhere near what we were 41 years ago. We've changed according to the situations that were presented to us, closure of Loring Air Force Base, the outward migration, and we've hung tough. And I could have only done it with my family. It's very important to me that our family stay here and prosper here and grow here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaughan. Our next opening statements come from Mr. Hugh Kirkpatrick.
Thank you as well for coming tonight. My name is Hugh Kirkpatrick. Live here in Caribou, obviously. Born and raised here. I work for the Caribou Utilities District, and would like to thank everyone tonight for this opportunity and the potential opportunity to serve the community if elected next month. Loring Air Force Base closed in 1994 and was not the demise of this community. I know that statement doesn't uphold the long-standing narrative which has prevailed in Caribou for almost 25 years, but it's true. Loring Air Force Base closing was not the demise of this community. In the time period of Loring's inception to closing, 1947 to 1994, total acres of potatoes grown in Maine went from 225,000 acres down to 75,000. That's a decrease of 67%, or 2/3. Caribou saw their proportional share of that decline. We're down to 50,000 acres now for a total decline of almost 80%. So it's been almost 25 years since Loring closed. Growing potatoes has continued to decline. what has taken the place of either of those industries. What has been tried? What are we going to try? The implications are not much, and we don't know. There doesn't appear to be a plan. We have two options. Caribou will be what we make it, or it will continue to be what we let it become. The last 25 years, Caribou has become stagnant and uncompetitive due to poor leadership and a lack of direction. My pitch here tonight is I want to be part of that solution, help pick a direction, and be part of making Caribou what we want it to become. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Opening statements now for 2 minutes by Councillor Jody Smith.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody here. Sometimes we don't even have this many people at some of our regular meetings, so it's good to see the turnout. And that is, again, thank you. My name is Jody Smith. I reside in Caribou. I'm 42 years old, as I didn't mention in the paper. I'm single. I've lived in Caribou my whole entire life. I currently work as the ground supervisor at the Main Veteran Cemetery in Caribou since 2005. Prior to that, I worked agriculture, construction industry. 3 years ago, I ran for city council kind of as an experiment, and lo and behold, I got on, and I enjoyed it. There was ongoing things when you get on here, and there's still some ongoing things that I would like to be a part of to finish, the school, that sort of thing, and the bird's eye cleanup. Probably the single biggest thing that I enjoyed was having the opportunity to hire a city manager. I think that was a huge point. And the other point I like doing is helping the individual citizens. There's been numerous times with numerous issues that we've had citizens come in here with issues, and working with the council, one way or another, we've been able to help those citizens with their needs. And I think that's my major concern, that we need to deal with individual citizens and their issues, help them in any way we can.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We will move on now for the last of our opening statements from Mr. Kevin St. Pierre.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out and being part of the process. My name is Kevin St. Pierre. I grew up in this town, went to Hilltop School, and graduated from Caribou High School back in 1980, which gives my age. After graduating, I went off to college and tried to come back to the county as a teacher. No luck. I ended up teaching in Calais. And after a year there, noticed I couldn't pay the bills because I wanted to keep solvent. I joined the Army. 20 years later, I retired from the Army and finally came back to the county. I've been back here for a little over 10 years, worked at DFAS, went back to college and got a liberal studies degree in business administration. But now I'm just trying to find a way to serve the community again, and I'm hoping this position can help me be part of the community and do some good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. St. Pierre. We will now begin with our first round of questions. This question will first be addressed to Mr. Gaughan, and then we will come down the line here, and then Mayor Akin will be the last to answer this question. And Mr. Gaughan, the resident of Caribou who posed this question asks, what do you see as the greatest concern for the Caribou community, and what do you see as our greatest need? So greatest concern and greatest need. You have 2 minutes.
Greatest concern, I would say, is the fact that we do not seem to be growing as fast as I would like to see us grow. I'm building, our family farm is a business structure that in order for us to grow, we have to be within a growing community. I do not think, though, that it's just Caribou's issue. I believe it's in a regional and Aroostook County region. And our state legislatures need to embark on the regional. But within Caribou, to focus on that, I'd like to see more growth. As far as the need to accomplish that, I have to say that we're doing the same thing over and over again. And I like to see the need change where people could come together and realize that we need a new, I'm not going to say direction, but a new avenue for which we can present our problems at the table, of which people of different views can come together and think this thing through without going at each other, so to speak. So I guess the need would be is to have a change in attitude about where we're going to take our city, an open mind to where we're going to take our city, and understand that we're all on the same ship here, and we all want to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaughan. Mr. Kirkpatrick, your 2 minutes on the greatest concern and greatest need for this community.
Sure. Our greatest concern, aging population, which is aging faster than the national average. And the greatest need is threefold: retaining local talent, getting our graduates to come back, and attracting people to move here who would love living in this community.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Councillor Smith, your thoughts on that issue?
I guess the greatest concern in our community, back to my opening statement, would be our citizens, but and what their citizens' needs are, and everybody has a different idea of what their biggest concern is. Obviously, the biggest concern is taxes and how we spend those taxes. Probably our biggest need is, is as obviously as to bring in new businesses or more infrastructure. But how do we do that? It's a very, very broad aspect. If we can protect the businesses that are here and get them stable, and then go on the outside and keep looking, but if you bring in one business and lose another one, then you haven't gained anything. You just have a push. So I think that's one of our big concerns, is taking care of what we have here now in place.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Mr. St. Pierre, you have 2 minutes to talk about what you see as the greatest concern and greatest need of this community.
The greatest concern for the town is actually out-migration. That's been mentioned earlier. We all have friends and family that choose to be outside of Caribou, but still use our services in some ways. We've got to keep blowing our own horn and tell people how good it would be to be in Caribou, which it is. We have the greatest rec department around. We draw people from outside communities to come here because they know we're good. Library, I think they've done great jobs adjusting to the population and doing great things. We continue on that path. We're a great town. We just got to get people to come back, and the taxes are driving people away, but we're doing good. We just got to keep pulling people in and making this town what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. St. Pierre. Mayor Aiken, you have the last word on the greatest concern and the greatest need for this city.
I guess my greatest concern is similar to everybody else's. It's the decreasing population in Caribou. If we look at 2010, there was 8,189 people was the population here. The estimated population for 2016 is 7,736 people. That's 453 people in 6 years that the population has declined. And if you want to look forward with it, eventually there'll be a time there'll be nobody here. So I think the decreasing population is the biggest concern. The greatest need, of course, is to correct that. And like everybody else, I think, in the county and beyond the county, even in the state, the greatest need we need is economic development, is business. And it's something that's been discussed many times. Many people have had thoughts on. Obviously, we haven't hit on the right combination of those thoughts yet, but that doesn't mean we're going to quit trying. So eventually, hopefully that is going to happen. The out-migration, especially with our young people, I personally don't believe you're going to keep all the young people here. Most young people, time they graduate school, they want to get away for a while. But the big thing is, a lot of them do want to come back. And when that time hits, when they want to come back, which is normally when they want to start families, because Caribou is a great place to start a family and bring up a family. There has to be something here for them to come back to.
Thank you, Mayor Aiken, and thank you to all of our candidates in that first round of question for observing the time cues and staying under time or at time. We'll move on to our second question now, and we'll begin this one with Mr. Kirkpatrick. And this Caribou resident asks...
Excuse me, we can't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All of you are speaking very softly.
Okay.
Except for Mr. St. Pierre. Mr. St. Pierre's doing good.
He's on.
Mike's here for the broadcast. It's not
Yeah.
broadcasting in here off the microphone.
Oh, okay.
We will do our best to raise our speaking level for you and not blow the audience that's watching at home out here. The second question again goes to Mr. Kirkpatrick, and it is, what are the key economic issues that need to be resolved today, and how do you plan to support efforts to bring new businesses to Caribou? 2 minutes.
Thank you. The key economic issues I feel are ignored, unused, or underused resources. We have 72 square miles of land, available commercial space and zoning, 4 distinct seasons, nearly direct access to a foreign country, and miles of waterfront property of which we continue to do nothing with. How would we support that? Plan and prioritize economic development accordingly. Retain all current businesses, provide a climate and template for their expansion, and finally align all rules, regulations, ordinances, boards, committees, and goals to be a magnet for outside investment. Put simply, why don't we just follow the first line in our mission statement? The City of Caribou, we're local government, are actively committed to welcoming, encouraging, and promoting continued development of commerce and industry.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Councillor Smith, that question again is economic issues, the key economic issues that need to be resolved, and how do you plan to support efforts to bring new businesses to Caribou?
Well, I don't know if it's an economic issue, but it's a budget issue. I mean, every year we're at the mercy of the state, is what we receive in funding, and we don't know where that's at. So we're reliant on outside funding sometimes, and if it's not there, it seems to just cripple us. Also, as far as economic issues, I mean, we need to obviously just have more income or more tax base, and that involves bringing in more businesses or expanding current businesses for more employees. So, I mean, we can do that as well. If you could get somebody to double or hire 5 more employees, we're just bringing another business in.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Mr. St. Pierre, your 2 minutes on that question.
Loring was mentioned earlier. Loring's been closed for generations. We've got to stop looking at that and start looking at what we need to do here. As I said earlier, if we can get the people to move here, we've got people working at DFAS, 600 some odd employees. Motivate them to come here, they'll shop here, they'll buy here. We get more businesses coming in. If we can provide a service that people want to be here for, they will bring their money from either government job or others and support the community that way. We don't need state help as much, but we need to bring the people will bring the funds, and the funds will bring businesses. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. St. Pierre. Mayor Aiken, your 2 minutes on this question.
Well, there's been a number of economic issues brought up here. I don't think any of them can be resolved today, as the question states. If it's that simple, it would have already been done. We have to determine that what we have in Caribou, what is unique about Caribou, or what we can do to differentiate ourselves from other communities. I mean, every community in the state of Maine basically has these same problems, with lowering populations, with not enough businesses and trying to bring businesses in. And we just have to come up, how can we differentiate ourselves from the others? The key word in this question was, how do you support efforts to bring in new business to Caribou? And I guess the obvious answer that first came to my mind is, we do whatever's possible. But I guess with further thought, it's we do whatever is feasible. I mean, people have talked about trying to get Target to come here. Well, you know, if we wanted to build a store for them, spend $15 million and build a store for them, and not charge them any taxes or any rental fees or anything else, they would probably come here, at least for a couple of years, to try it. But who's going to pay for all that? The taxpayers? You'd have all the residents' taxes going up $100 a year or $200 a year. You'd have many of the businesses that would be upset because we were supporting someone that was detrimental to their business because they were losing business because of it. So whatever is feasible. And from a council standpoint, the things that are feasible is looking at what do we have to offer them from the standpoint of, does the city own property that we can offer a building site to someone? Can the city look at rezoning so that if someone wants to go in a certain area, we can possibly rezone what needs to be done.
Thank you very much, Mayor Aiken. Mr. Gahn, you have the last word on this, and for 2 minutes.
Yes, the question had today in it, and it kind of threw me a little bit because that's a quick fix. 10 years ago, I would have said we needed jobs. Today, I'm going to say we need workers. It's unbelievable how many of my friends are telling me that they could grow their company, but they need more qualified people. So I'm kind of in between. I don't really know the answer to this particular question. I will say this, that I find that the best growth is going to come from within, and that we need to support our local businesses that are already here. We need to give them every break we can give them. And I can tell you that the Gahn Farms has been the beneficiary of some very good people from the city of Caribou. This farm, our farm wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the individuals of Aroostook County. Yes, there was programs that were available to me, but it was the individual people that stepped up to the plate that kept our farm afloat when we needed to keep it afloat. So we're very grateful for that. We can grow from within. We need to support the businesses that are already here. Yes, we look for the golden nugget that's out there, get a game plan, and we go seek it. I would really like to see an emphasis put on the privately owned sector, private sector that's already here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gahn. Our third question will first be addressed to Councillor Smith. And that question is, again, from a Caribou resident. And the question states, candidates usually say they want to lower taxes, but how would you plan to do that, especially without cutting essential services such as road maintenance, plowing, ambulance, fire, police, recreation center activities, library, etc.?
No, this is probably being on the council. This is the largest question you get downtown or anywhere you go is you lower the taxes. So you're working on the budget and you go to eliminate anything, and then people go bananas. And then you could ask 30 different people what they want. Anyone here? What do you cut? Do you cut a plow driver? Do you cut the librarian? And it's so broad that everybody has a different aspect of what they want. I think in the last 3 years in the budget, we've managed to maintain the taxes, just staying pretty well status quo and maintaining the services. What do you want for the services for what we're providing? I think that's the big question is how, taxes are paid, but how do we spend the taxes? That was is a very hard line to draw.
Mr. St. Pierre.
We should run this town or city like a business. We need to see if there is a return on investment. There are some programs that we do have to cut. I hate to say it, people are going to get angry, but there are some programs that aren't really doing a return on investment. Nylander Museum comes to first in my mind, but that's just my age. We need to just start looking at what is getting people in or helping versus other things that just are fluff, really not doing us much good or not returning what we put into it. That's all.
Mayor Aiken, you have up to 2 minutes on this question.
First of all, I don't think anyone in this group has said they want to lower taxes. I've never, and yes, that is a very common statement. You usually hear it when elections come around, whether it's municipal or state or federal. And I guess the first thing you do is ask yourself a question: whoever did that? I look at all the other communities around here. It's never been done. The budget process in the municipality it's a juggling act. How do you maintain the services that you presently have, and without increasing the taxes? Now, are there ways to lower taxes? Yes, there are. You have to look at the people that we have working for the city. If someone is going to leave, do we need to replace that person with a full-time person, or can we use a part-time person, which would be at much lower cost to us? We need to look at, are there areas where we can combine job duties for a person that is already here? And to me, the third thing that has been very difficult to try to get off the ground is the communities in this area have to start looking at consolidation. How do all of these communities try to do things together and spread cost amongst all of them? And I look at things like a code enforcement officer. You know, there is not enough building in any community in this area that I know of that requires a full-time code enforcement officer to be going out and inspecting and so on every week in every community. But it could be shared. Payroll clerk, you know, I had one payroll clerk when I was running operations that did the payroll for over 1,000 people. Well, there isn't 1,000 people working for the local governments here. So why does everybody have a payroll clerk?
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor Aiken. Mr. Gahn, your 2 minutes on this question.
The first question asks, what would we need to,
Well, how would you plan to lower taxes?
yeah,
assuming
well,
that
the
that's-
very first question, and I made mention that we would need to understand as a community that we'd like to explore a different structure for which we look at how we finance our government. I'm a big advocate of zero-based budgeting. Government can't be everything for everybody. It's just not possible. You have to take the creative thought process of the community and apply it toward the system by which we can answer these questions that have come up, which are hard questions to answer. And we have to do a needs assessment on the different programs that we have. The needs have to be then put up against a cost structure. And the cost structure has to be valued for the return on the value. Without everyone being at everybody's throat. I'm just so tired of the fighting. But I'd have to say that a zero-based budgeting or some other type of structure other than what we are currently doing. It's the same way we've done it for the last 35 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gahn. And the last word on this one is yours, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
All right, well, everyone's covered this ground pretty well, so I'll just read what I had here. So it's, you know, obviously for this there's no magic, right? Lowering taxes are accomplished either by decreasing the budget, raising revenue, or a combination of the both. Decreasing the budget without decreasing community services is possible by doing things such as implementing new technologies, like the performance contract you all did with Train a few years ago, or outsourcing like the city does with its IT services. Raising revenue is accomplished through additional investment in the community, which we covered in the previous question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Our fourth question will first be addressed to Mr. St. Pierre. It's a relatively simple and straightforward one, and it's what do you see as the Caribou community's greatest strength and why?
Anytime someone says it's a relatively simple question, I worry, but he's correct. Sorry. Caribou, there are a lot of strengths, really. The people are great. I've traveled enough of the world to see people that I would never go back to a certain town, but Caribou, it's welcoming. I was so happy to come back here after so many years away, but I have friends that visit from Texas. We recently had some friends. It's a fantastic, relaxing, good people. And if we can just keep thinking that way and be happy about what we have, we can do great. We are just a great city.
Mayor Aiken, Caribou's greatest strength?
I guess along the same lines, it is its people. And I say that because I think the majority of the people that live here because they want to be here, and they are going to stay here. And again, I talk about the young people, and yes, I know they're going to go away for a while, but sometime down the road, if it's available and jobs available, they'll come back. And people in Caribou overall have a great work ethic, and that's a strength. They also are volunteer people. There's a lot of people in Caribou that volunteer in various organizations throughout the area just to try to make things better for everybody that lives in Caribou.
Thank you, Mayor Aiken. Mr. Gahn.
Along the same theme, people, I'll go right along with it. As I mentioned earlier, our farm wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the people that helped us along the way, and I'm sure there's people that have helped other people. Aroostook County is unique. I think it's a great quality of life. How could you have not enjoyed this past week outside? Just tremendous. We used to have people that used to board with us from Loring Air Force Base when it was here back in the early days. And you could have filled that base with people who wanted to be here because of our quality of life. It's a matching of that along with attracting people. That's the combination we got to try to get to. But regardless of what type of governance we have in our city, regardless of how much money we spend on infrastructure or city expenses or labor, it always comes down to, like any good business, it will always come down to the people who are running the show. The people who have their boots on the ground, so to speak. And it's our greatest asset. We just have to figure out how to combo that with the other dynamics that make the community whole.
Thank you, Mr. Gaughan. Mr. Kirkpatrick.
I went in a different direction. Caribou's greatest strength, I believe, is our size. We have 46,000 acres with an abundance of valuable natural features, including a massive river and many streams. The people which settled this community in the 1800s figured out how to leverage those acres of land and features to establish and grow this town. In a 21st century economy, we have to do that again, but the means, methods, and markets are completely different. So what worked in the past, not going to work now. We need to figure out what works now and start moving in that direction.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
I guess I'll go along with the same fact. It's our citizens, and also I think one of our greatest strengths is we're kind of putting it down somewhat is, you know, we do have infrastructure here. We have a new school coming. We have a rec center. We have a library. We have an excellent police department. We have a full-time fire department. There was I believe Purveyor would not come to the community if it didn't have a full-time fire department. So there was a draw there for that business. So we do have some very, very good infrastructure as far as that to entice people to come here, and also our city employees. So we have a wonderful staff that does a lot of things.
I can't quite hear you.
Our city employees, we have a wonderful staff that does a lot of things and very efficiently, I think. So that's a great strength we have as well.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We're now going to move on to our fifth question. And there's a bit of a build-up to this question from the person who submitted it. And I will, there's a disclaimer at the beginning, so I'll begin with reading that. This one will first be addressed to Mayor Aitken. This resident of Caribou states, we should first recognize that Dave Ouellette and the Public Works Department are doing a tremendous job with the work that they do and the limited budget that they have to work with. While the pavement overlay work that has been done over recent years looks great for a short period of time, it is essentially a Band-Aid that is covering up more severe issues. The gravel base under our streets is failing and adequate drainage systems are needed, such as properly designed underdrain and catch basin systems or ditch and culvert systems. First, this resident wants you to indicate if you are willing to stop, as he or she puts it, kicking the can down the road and seek and match as necessary outside funding in order to invest in the infrastructure of our community. And could you elaborate on what your plans might be? So first, indicate if you are willing to invest more in this and what those plans might be. Mayor Aitken, that's your 2 minutes to begin.
Well, I guess when I read this question, I see this question as somewhat of an oxymoron. I agree that Dave Ouellette is doing a great job with the Public Works Department, but then to say that they are just using a Band-Aid to fix these things, I can guarantee you that Dave Ouellette would not say that he's used a Band-Aid when it involves street repairs and so on in Caribou. And I personally don't think that either. I have never heard of anyone on council, that has rejected any thoughts or ideas Dave Ouellette has had about repairing the streets in Caribou. We completed a major project downtown which was done with matching funds, and yes, I'm in favor of doing these things with matching funds. That project, the most part of that was roads owned by the DOT. But instead of them doing it all, we used matching funds to get it done because it needed it. You have the same situation out here today that's coming into play on High Street. We all know what kind of shape it's in. The DOT has that further down their list as far as redoing that street. Dave Willett, who is doing a tremendous job, is talking to the DOT. We are going to have all the catch basins, trying to get them to redo all of the catch basins out here on High Street, and trying to get them convinced that we should work something where we would do joint funding as far as repaving the street itself and the work that's required to do so. So I don't totally agree with this. I wish whoever this is that made this question up would contact me. I'd love to know their credentials in that for making this assumption and why they made this assumption.
Thank you. Mr. Gahn, 2 minutes on this question.
I also didn't follow the question. Last time I was on the city council, Dave Willett had a formula, a plan. He'd give each road a point schedule, and it was like on a 10-year rotation, and roads were getting done in a kind of a, were they done immediately? No, but they got done in an efficient time, and it was matched, once again, matching it with the funds that were available. I don't know what's happened in 10 years since I've been on the council, but to me, I thought Dave was had a.
That system is still in place.
Well, there. I mean, so I don't understand the crumbling part. Don't get me wrong. Roads can always use an extra help, but in my case on Route 161, we waited 25 years to have that road fixed, and it finally got fixed. So I mean, it's part of the process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gahn. Mr. Kirkpatrick?
I was kind of hung up on this question a bit too, and I got hung up on the term limited budget. I know Dave, and I'm sure he's not advocating for a bake sale to help out his department. He does have a difficult job. But for the citizens of Caribou, the public works budget's around $2 million a year. The total budget for the city's $9 million. So the public works budget is over 20%. So it's, I feel a bit disingenuous to 8,000 people here in town to say that's limited. It's a lot of money. Public Works does have a lot to accomplish throughout the year, but other than the federal government, nobody gets an unlimited budget, right? So, anyway, to answer your question, even if not elected, I'd probably help out with this process through the utility district, as we use the same funding programs as Public Works would do, would use for projects like catch basins and things like that. More specifically, the infrastructure projects, they would need to be identified, prioritized, budgeted, planned for, and then execute over time. Just the nature of the question, to me, seems like maybe this should have been looked at a long time ago.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I had the same feelings about the question, I guess, and the fact of the match is necessary, the outside funding. We have no control over when that outside funding comes in, or when it's available, or how much we get. And we're currently in the process of working on High Street, and it's been pushed back with the DOT, and Dave has been working on that, and who pays for the catch basins, and then do we match it? Do we pay for one side of the curbs? Do they pay for the other side of the curbs? But I don't think any council would, if not match any funding that was available for any of that type of infrastructure. And I guess, with the project, and he also, as they mentioned, there is a formula that I think it's 2.5 miles of paving in town and 9 miles of chip seal outside of town, and that's, he implements it very well.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Mr. St. Pierre, you have the last word on this.
I am going to echo the other candidates. This is northern Maine. We know the winters are tough. We know what it does to the roads in our area. Heck, our houses, driveways, everyone's the same issue. I remember throwing out the suspension on my first vehicle back 40 years ago. This is Maine. We have a pothole season. But they're doing great, matching the funds, getting money from places where they can. Did the same for the school we're getting. We're doing what we can for a rising cost. I think they're doing a fantastic job, and as many people like to complain about the roads, I'm sorry, but I remember worse conditions, so I think we're doing good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. St. Pierre. Our sixth question, we'll begin with Mr. Gahn on this one for 2 minutes to tell us about your commitment to small town and rural communities. What keeps you rural by choice? What makes you want to stay and make a life in Caribou?
Well, I like the community, but my commitment, I guess I could show you my payment booklet that I've invested on that farm, but I get a little troubled when people say, you know, your tax base is based on, your taxes are, your valuation is based on what you can sell your property for. Well, wait a minute, I don't want to sell my property, so that's mute to me. I want to pass my property down to the next generation. I have a strong commitment. I want our community to thrive. I want it to grow. I want it to be friendly. I want it to be attractive. I'm trying to do my little part in accomplishing this, but it takes the whole community to come together to make it work right. But my commitment is what I've shown out there, what our family has shown out there at the farm.
Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, I was born here, educated here, and at the University of Maine at Orono. I moved away 20 years ago, and I came back 4 years ago. My intention was always to come back. I wanted to, and I'm fifth generation in my family here. It was difficult, but it was worth it. And I think that's the key to get others to either move here or come back. We have to make them believe that it's worth it.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
I guess I've moved here my whole life. If I was going to go somewhere, I'd probably already done that. So I'm going to be here, and I've always liked Caribou. I was born and raised here, and like I say, where everybody knows your name. It's wonderful to go downtown and see everybody you know, and it's a wonderful community.
Mr. St. Pierre.
I came back, and I've lived in DC in rush hour traffic. There's madness. Places where it's like you've got bullet holes in apartments you're looking at. Maine, northern Maine, we were quiet, calm, and just not as much stress as the southern parts of this country. Like Mr. Kirkpatrick said, people come back. We've got good life here, and we just, I'm happy to be a part of the Maine community where people will welcome you back, happy to see you, and just stories to tell. Good life.
Thank you, Mr. St. Pierre. Mayor Aiken, the last word on this one is yours.
I guess I grew up in a community that was about 1,000 people, and my wife grew up about 3 miles outside of that community. She was in the real rural area, and we have spent our whole lives, with the exception of about 2 years, living in communities. We've moved approximately 12 times. We lived in communities that were probably all less than 15,000 people, other than once. We lived in a city for 2 years. And that's why it only lasted 2 years, because we didn't like it. We're rural people. We don't want all the traffic to contend with all the time. We like the fact that if we're going to go out to eat or if we're going to go downtown shopping, that we're going to run into somebody we know and we can stop and talk to them for a while. And, you know, when you live in a place like Caribou, you can do that. When you live in a big city like I did for 2 years, maybe once in 50 times when you went out, you might see somebody you knew. Other than that, you never knew anybody. Everybody was strangers. So, you know, living in a small community, and especially in Caribou, great place to be, and great people to talk with and pass the time of day.
Thank you, Mayor Aiken. Our seventh question comes from a resident who asks, what is your interest in cultural and arts development, and how much value do you place on the cultural institutions of Caribou, the Nylander Museum, Caribou Performing Arts Center, Library, and others? And we begin for 2 minutes with Mr. Kirkpatrick on this one.
Thank you. The value I place on those institutions, at their very least, is in their historical significance. The Nylander is the only public is the only Works Progress Administration project built in Caribou. The library, of course, is one of the many thousands built by Andrew Carnegie in the early 1900s. And the Performing Arts Center was built during my freshman year at Caribou High School, where I watched the school department staff build it in the middle of winter, staring out at my desk from Mr. Panette's French class. At their greatest, they should be well operated, maintained, and leveraged as the assets they are to the community for educational, cultural, entertainment, and perhaps, as our library director has done, used in the economic development in the community as well.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Smith, your 2 minutes.
I have value on the cultural institutions of Caribou. I guess if you start, they're here, they're part of the community. If you start removing those or eliminating them, then you've eliminated some of your infrastructure, and maybe you're going against the fact of what you're using to draw people to the community, what kind of service it may be, whether it's the library or the CPAC. And you can, like I said earlier, we can pick at each one or the other, you know, and not to say that they can't be maintained frugally, but I believe we should support them.
Great. All right. Mr. St. Pierre.
I do not see a reason why we should be providing this kind of thing. We're a city, we need to provide service, get the roads clean. Library I see useful because we're providing a service. But we can't provide everything for everyone. We need to draw a limit where enough is enough. Let's take care of our people, but not splurge on just stuff that frills. Sorry.
Mayor Aiken.
I mean, I have some leanings towards culture. I don't know if I consider all of these to be cultural development. I look at CPAC, and when I look at that, it bothers me, I guess, the fact that it's so underused. And there's so many possibilities with that, but that isn't something that the city has control of. That is something that the school board has control of. And I'm amazed that more people aren't after the school board, trying to get them to do something so that it's not so expensive to use CPAC. I mean, there are organizations in town here that used to hold their events there that no longer hold them there because they can't afford it. They can't afford to pay for janitors and police and everything else that the school board requires them to do if they want to use CPAC. And by way of this meeting, I hope that someone from the school board is listening and maybe can bring it up at their meetings to try to make some changes so that we get better use out of it. As far as what value I put on the other things, an Island Museum and the library and so on, to me, that's a deal. It's not what value I put on, it's what value the citizens put on it. And, you know, if we have a budget of $100,000 for an item and it's being used by 25,000 different times during the year by the citizens, well, it's only $4 a year. If you have something that has a budget of 25,000 and it's only being used by 1,000 people a year, well, that's 25, that's $25. So, to me it depends how much the citizens want it. Not what value I place on it, but how much the citizens want it and how much they're going to use it. And if it's going to be used, it should be here. If it's not, it shouldn't.
Thank you, Mayor Aiken. Mr. Gahn.
I'm basically a small government type guy. My philosophy is in the direction of government has one real basic duty, and that's the protection of its citizens. I would say fire department, police department, public works department, to a degree the rec department. These are the essential, ambulance department. These are the essential responsibilities of our government, the way I think our government should be. If a group of citizens wants to maintain the Nylander Museum, which has value, I'm all for the government supporting it monetarily, depending on the needs assessment, same way with CPAC, same way with the library. But I think it goes back to having a needs assessment because what are the needs of the community, and can they be met without, say, a physical building or a physical employee? It's the partnership. I'll agree with Gary on this one. It's the citizens that will bring it forward, have the plan, present it, and the council can decide on the value.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaughan. The last of our prepared questions in advance, or submitted questions in advance, will be first addressed to Council Member Smith. And it reads as follows. The resident of Caribou would ask you to please tell me about your vision for revitalizing the empty downtown, Skyway Plaza, and Bennett Drive spaces. What are your goals, and how do you envision marketing Caribou to all of New England? Again, Council Member Smith, you have up to 2 minutes on this one.
There was one time the city was funding approximately $50,000, I believe, or something, the Buxton company in Boston.
We can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Oh, it was funding approximately $50,000 to Buxton company in the Boston or New York region to promote Caribou, and that didn't seem to be working or to our liking, so we defunded that. But that doesn't mean that we can't on our own help revitalize the downtown. We have tools in the toolbox here. We have we can do credit enhancements. We can do some TIF. There's a facade grant program that can help. There's the community economic development grants money that we can help businesses get through, and I think we've been effective on some of that. And I guess my goal would be to use those tools that are available to the council, what we can use to help them. We can't do everything because we're limited to what we can do. So that would be our goals. And how do you envision marketing Caribou to all of New England? Well, there's a way to do that, I guess, but maybe it wasn't the way we were doing it prior, and I don't have the answer to how we would change that.
Okay. Mr. St. Pierre.
The recession hit the entire country hard. There's a retail or downage. Businesses that are selling stuff are having problems all around. So for Caribou, it's not rare, these problems we're having. We can open services that we know people will come for. Restaurants, people have to eat. They can't order from Amazon a sandwich. We can have that go around.
Yeah.
Manufacturing, if we can make stuff here and use the stuff we have, we're doing good on a lot of areas, and slowly, with the recession over and the economy doing better, things will come. We can welcome with the grant programs we have and just dangle a carrot, and slowly it'll happen. But we got to be a little patient.
Mayor Aiken.
Yeah, the question, vision for revitalizing it, and what are your goals? I mean, the obvious goals are to have every available space that is in Caribou filled. Do we as a council, are we able to do that? I mean, as Jody mentioned, there's tools in the box that can be used, but you have to have people that want to come here, and you have to have the people that have control of these spaces want to rent them out for a fee that someone is willing to pay. I have heard from people that inquired about Caribou and looked into opportunities here and ended up going to Presque Isle because they couldn't afford the rent. Well, unless the city is prepared to buy buildings and everything themselves and offer lower rent so that we can get people in, we're not going to control this. Whoever owns these properties, if they're going to look for a rent that's not feasible and don't care whether they rent them or not, it's going to be very tough to fill them. So,
Thank you, Mayor Aiken. Mr. Gaughan.
Once again, I believe it's up to the individual. This is not a charge of Caribou Council per se. There are the tools in the toolbox that can be used. I believe that perhaps a safety net structure could be in place for those turnover times when things are a little rough for certain businesses and members. But all in all, I'd have to say, like if you took downtown, for example, the downtown people ought to have an association, and the association ought to come up with the plan. plans ought to be derived from the bottom up, not from the top down. That's how they're going to succeed. If we listen to what they want, listen to the plan, put it through a needs assessment, can we afford it, bring in the state, do whatever we can to help them. But it's an individual deal. But I'd like to say this, in the 44 years we've been in Caribou, Caribou's had many plans to revitalize. I find that the problem is we don't implement them. Long-range plan, seems like there was a while there we had one every 5 years. Well, I guess I don't understand the term long-range then. It can take generations to create a new plan, to implement that new plan, but more important, to see that new plan succeed. And we seem to have a short time span because there's always a new plan coming along. So it's the people that need to bring it to the council and work, if not the individuals. Let the individuals work it through.
Thank you, Mr. Gahn. Mr. Kirkpatrick, the last word on this one's yours.
Thank you. Yeah, my vision for those commercial areas isn't really important. Like everyone else has mentioned, it's what those property owners decide. And again, that's what do they, what do they or we in the community want the downtown to look like versus what we've let it become. We've probably let it become that because these plans have never been implemented. So my goal is let's pick a goal and start moving towards it. Additionally, I believe we shouldn't be marketing Caribou to all of New England. We should be marketing it everywhere. If people want to come here, we shouldn't care where they're from.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. We have two sort of non-duplicated questions that I have here. I believe there's a couple more there. I'll begin with this one that was submitted via email just prior to this evening. And it asks if you are in favor of reinstating a Chamber of Commerce in Caribou. Why or why not? And candidate order on this one will begin with Mr. St. Pierre.
I am in favor of Chamber of Commerce. As I said earlier, we need to run this city like a business. These people know how to run a business. At least I hope they do. Therefore, use the expertise, the people that actually have skin in the game, and let them help themselves with our help.
Mr. Mayor Aiken, your thoughts on the chamber?
I have nothing against Chamber of Commerce. I've been involved in many chambers of commerce across the country. This was the first time, I guess, I came to a region or an area where the Chamber of Commerce was basically funded by the city. And when I look back in the records, sometimes to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I think that the chamber should be able to stand on its own. It serves the businesses. It's in the business's best interest, and I think that is the case, and it can be, but it should be funded by the business as well. And we certainly went through a time frame here where we agreed to provide them with a facility, paid heat, paid phone, all their costs, but not the salary of the director. And the businesses were not in favor of continuing to pay him, I guess. They didn't collect that much money from their dues, so the chamber was dissolved. If the chamber wanted to restart, I would certainly do everything I can to support them, but not from a standpoint that the taxpayers of the city are paying for the chamber to operate.
Thank you, Mr. Gahn.
I am not in favor of a city-sponsored Chamber of Commerce. Once again, I sound like a broken record, but if the businessmen and women of Caribou want to have an association, get together, present a plan to the council, I have no problem in allocating some seed money, some kind of funds for it, to a small tune. I mean, it needs assessment. You got to look it all through. But I think it's a shame that we don't have a chamber in Caribou. I really do.
Mr. Kirkpatrick.
I don't kind of look at this as a yes or no. I kind of look at it as what, again, what direction do we want to go in? Do we call it Chamber of Commerce? Do we call it a dedicated economic development person, like say the little town of Fort Fairfield has next to us? Or like Caribou used to have in the late 1960s, we had the Caribou Development Corp. Any one of those. We could pick any one of those and do it. I guess my overarching theme is let's pick one and do it. If we think that's what we want to become, and that's what's going to bring businesses and people here.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
I'm in favor of the city necessarily funding a Chamber of Commerce. I am in favor of a Chamber of Commerce, but I'll agree with Mark on this, that there should not be a city council decision. We could provide some in-kind services, which we did, because we had a facility that was not being used, and we wanted to combine that, which is a good thing. Anytime you can combine a service or utilize something dually or like that. So I guess that would have to be something that would be brought to the council by the business people of Caribou.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Our next question, submitted by members in the audience here, says, this individual says, being a councillor requires a lot of time. Researching your materials and preparation for your meetings is important so that proper and informed decisions can be made. Will you do the research required and not do just what feels good? And this question first goes to you, Mayor Akin.
It's a very good question, and it's one of the things that I certainly have found in the 6 years I've been on council. There is a lot of research in that needs to be done. I certainly think I do my share. And there's never a day goes by that I have somehow or other don't get involved with something that involves the city of Caribou or the council. And I just hope, as the question states, for everybody that's here tonight, that they're willing to dedicate the time that's required to do this. And I know that's very difficult when you're working and so on, but there is time that's required and preparation before our meetings, and I hope that everyone takes that road.
Thank you. Mr. Gaughan?
I have the time. I'm willing to put in the work. I would have to say that I guide myself, if elected to the council, I would guide myself on a philosophy that I carry with me. And I would apply that philosophy to the different issues that come before the council. Always never say no, but still I have a philosophy that I carry with me, and I would implement that. But yes, I have the time, and I have the desire, and I have the will to, and luckily I have the family that's willing to let me do the work.
Mr. Kirkpatrick?
Yeah, I have no problem with the time and or research that would go into fulfilling the duties, and I feel it's a worthy cause.
Councillor Smith?
I feel that I've been putting the time in that's necessary. It does take a lot of time when you first get on the council as you move on, especially with the budget, and there's legal research, and there's always ongoing things. So there's a lot of reading.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Mr. St. Pierre?
I wouldn't have put my name in if I didn't plan to commit my time and effort to make sure that I can serve this community. I went through, got the names on the ballot, or signed and everything else, talked to people on their opinions and everything. Yes, I will research and put the effort forth to make this community great. Thank you.
This next to last question was submitted from Facebook or on Facebook, and it states, as a Caribou resident, I am concerned we are not staying at pace or on pace compared to the United States with energy innovation. Should council look at energy efficient alternatives with corporations throughout the county and country? And it goes first to you, Mr. Gaughan.
No, the council shouldn't. We pay dues to the Northern Maine Development Commission, and the commission is the regional identity that we use that would formulate what that questionnaire is stating in putting that together. I suppose doing something cooperatively amongst the communities, we could accomplish some of those goals, but in general, we pay to have that. The city of Caribou pays the dues to have that done. We have our legislators in Augusta that we could ask to help us help accomplish those things. But I would turn that question and those concerns to the people that we are already paying to do those things.
Thank you, Mr. Gahn. Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure, I can do that. This
For everybody.
This Caribou resident is concerned we are not staying on pace compared to the United States with energy innovation. Should this council look at energy efficient alternatives with corporations throughout the county and country?
Well, if I'm understanding the question correctly, the city did partner with Trane several years ago for an energy efficiency project, performance contract. I'm not sure if that's what they're driving at, or if they're driving at something in regards to like undoing what these communities did back in the 1940s when they joined Maine Public Service as an electrical co-op to undo that, and then we all become independent again. With our electricity provider. I'm not quite sure. I guess the question should be a little more clear, I guess.
As far as energy efficiency, I guess we are doing something, or we're working at potentially doing something with the LED street lights, and that's a community effort, I believe. That's Caribou Prescal. There's several communities that are looking at doing that. Where that ends up, I don't know, but I think that's something that we are doing that would address that question.
Mr. St. Pierre.
I think we're very innovative. We're doing great. We've got a heat pump in this room. Energy efficient. LED lights, as mentioned. The council's been working on that. We're doing a lot of good stuff without wasting money on fly-by-night stuff that isn't working. We're doing good stuff, and we're going to keep trying as best we can to save money, energy, and taxpayers.
Thank you, Mr. St. Pierre. Mr. Aiken.
Again, I don't. I don't totally understand the question either, because we are. There are certain things that we are doing, and it's been mentioned, the LED lights and the heat pumps that we've installed all around the city in our facilities. But I don't know if he's referring to that we should be involved with trying to open up a wind farm or solar panel farm or something like that. And if that is the case, no, I don't think we should be involved in that end of the energy efficiency in us being an owner. I think, yes, we could support anyone that is looking to do something like that, but as an owner, no.
Right, our last question, and this one comes from someone in the room, is a straightforward one. How do you feel we can get growth in Caribou? Don't know if the answer is so straightforward. The question is, though. Again, and the first person to answer on this one is you, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
I think we've hit on a lot of things that would promote growth, and the simplest way would be supporting the businesses that we have here, helping them to grow, and then attracting new businesses, and that will bring people that hopefully would love to live here.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I guess we touched on that with some different ways, but we need to promote ourselves. We need to work. The council needs to work with businesses, so it's not a big ratchet. That, people can come to a common. I'm not somebody's opposed to this. Communication, working with outside organizations or outside businesses, and how we can combine everything and get everybody to work together. And that's probably the biggest thing, I think, how we would promote growth.
Thank you, Mr. St. Pierre.
I'm going to steal a line from Mr. Kirkpatrick. People, we have to make them love to live here. That's it. If everyone starts loving this area, Instead of choosing to live in Limestone, Fort Fairfield, other areas, they'll come to Caribou first. Whether they're working at DFAS, at the hospital, Loring Industries. If they come here and love it here, they'll buy stuff to fix their homes, buy stuff to eat, buy things to, drive, all sorts of stuff. Money comes in, businesses do better. If we love the town, we're good.
Thank you, Mayor Aiken.
I guess I could answer very simply. I would say with great difficulty. We keep talking about all of these things, and, it's a great place to live, which we all agree with. We got to bring in business, which we all agree with. But, we don't have control over a lot of those things. And, we're so far from the marketplace here that it limits the type of business that we can get that makes worthwhile to be here. And I refer to things, I always mention Smith & Wesson, for instance. There you've got a company that has a very high-priced product that the freight is not a big issue for it. Because when you're talking about shipping a truckload of rifles, you're probably only adding the cost of $1 a rifle or something onto the cost of the product. If you're shipping a carload of hula hoops, it doesn't work the same way. So we have to try to find something that is a higher priced item. We have a filter company here, which very few people know about, that make filters, very high priced product. So freight is not a big issue for them, or not a big part of their margins. And, there's only so many things we can get. And again, we're not the only ones looking. Everybody is. So it is with great difficulty. And sooner or later, someone will come up with something. We haven't yet, but one will come up with an idea that will hit, and it'll happen. Will it be tomorrow? Will it be next year? Will it be 5 years from now? I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Gahn.
Growth. That's the whole issue, is a rising tide will float all ships. I'd have to say that I honestly think that there are existing companies currently in town that want to grow, that have the ability to grow, that can see a potential of growth. But there's this lingering, do I pull the trigger, whether it's labor, whether it's investment, their own financial situation, whatever the reason is, they're holding back. We need to get to the community, people who are already here. Look elsewhere, I agree, but it's so much easier to expand from within than it is to look elsewhere. There's a philosophy that government will tax you, and then government will provide for everyone's needs. There's another philosophy of which I like to follow is, you let me keep as much money as I can, and I'll grow the community in the way that I think it should go. I'm gonna be the one that stays here. I'm gonna be the one that pays the bills. I'm gonna be the one to make sure that everything works. So I stick with that philosophy. The growth is here. I just think we need to make it attractive for those people to want to expand.
Thank you, Mr. Gahn. I will remind everyone here present and those of you watching at home that there are 7 candidates running for 3 open seats on the Caribou City Council on this year's ballot. In a moment, we will have the candidates present begin with closing statements, but I will remind those of you who are here and those of you who may have just tuned in at home that candidate Sarah McLean was with us at the beginning of the forum and indicated that she preferred not to seek the seat that she is on the ballot for. And encourage you not to vote for her. Council candidate and current councillor Nicole Cody is unable to be with us this evening. She prepared an opening statement, which I read earlier. I will now read her closing statement, and then we'll proceed with the closing statements of the 5 candidates present. Nicole Cody's closing statement reads, I am sure that this candidate forum has been a beneficial opportunity to get to know the candidates better. I wish that I had the opportunity to share with you my ideas, thoughts, experiences, and concerns. Although I was not available to do so as I am away with work obligations, I ask that you consider re-electing me for a full term as a city councillor. I have over 16 years of government experience. I commit work each day to ensure taxpayers' dollars are used appropriately. I value your feedback and look forward to listening to your needs. I am a mom, a military wife, an active member of the Caribou community. I have been committed to my role on the council over the past 7 months. I have a strong desire to help Caribou grow. You will not be disappointed, Nicole Cody, City Councilor. And with that, we will now begin our closing statements, and the order will begin with Councilor Smith.
I guess I'll go back to the question 6. It says, tell us about your commitment to the small town and rural communities. I believe this is part of my commitment to being a lifetime member of Caribou and help with some of the things that are ongoing and are going. I'd like to thank everybody for the questions they submitted. One thing about these questions is from all our citizens is most of these questions are not going to be fixed immediately, or tomorrow or the next day. They're all progressive questions that are things that are, which leads me to believe that these people are concerned about the future of our community, and I am as well. So I think these issues are being addressed and will be addressed in the future, and I'd like to be a part of that to continue to serve on the council.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Mr. St. Pierre.
Thank you again for coming out to be part of the process. Myself, I'm running just to see if I can serve this community and help them. My experience just with teams and just being part of the military taught me just be a team, work for the mission, and accomplish that mission. And I'll continue with that tenacity right through it. I'm not really a strong believer in jumping in and making a million changes. I'm a believer to observe, figure out what we can do better, and do it. So I'm hoping that you stand by me in that mission, and let's make this town great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Aiken.
Yeah, I didn't prepare a closing statement. I guess, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I think that it's great to be a part of this. And for all the people that have tuned in, and I have no idea how many, but
18 last count.
hopefully,
18.
hopefully,
20.
hopefully everyone's had a chance to listen to everyone, and we'll have the ability now to determine who they will vote for. And I guess the most important thing to me is to get out and vote. I mean, it's I don't know what kind of a turnout there'll be, but I think it's a shame in this country that, when we have these elections, we have such a small percentage of people that come out to vote, and then after they, haven't come out, then they complain about what the results are and who got what office and so on. So, before you complain about it, go out and vote instead. It doesn't take a long time, and I've enjoyed the 6 years I've been on council. I am willing to serve another 3. I think I've gained a lot of knowledge with the workings of the city, what needs to be done and what can be done. And as I say, one of my goals, if I carry on, will be trying to do something about consolidation in this area with the communities that are in this area, because I see it as one of the biggest opportunities we have. So.
Thank you, Mayor Aiken. Mr. Gahn.
I'd like to talk to you about how we finance our local government. Most communities use what is called an incremental spreadsheet process, where you take last year's actual budget and use across-the-board adjustments, which inherently will lock in those programs. Zero-based budgeting is a process where you evaluate the programs on a yearly basis, both by the needs of the community and the cost to the community. By following a zero-based budgeting process over time, our community form of government should and will deliver better services for less money. Who would have thought we would have had such an outward migration of population? Who would have thought the obituary list of the private sector businesses would be so large? Who would have thought that the internet would have such an influence over our lives? Businesses of 30 years ago are mostly gone. Yet Caribou, as with most Aroostook County communities today, are using the same process of financing our local government as we did some 35 years ago. I am running for the City Council, trying to sway that pendulum toward a zero-based budgeting system. Zero-based budgeting is a process. It's a philosophy to draw out the creativity within a community. Zero-based budgeting isn't about counting light bulbs. Zero-based budgeting isn't about firing people. Zero-based budgeting is a process in which you bring the community together in a creative form to guide us into the future. We have the talent right here in Caribou. We have the department heads, we have the city employees, and most important, we have the taxpayers. With open minds to change, we ourselves can create a more sustainable future, one with better services for less cost. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Gahn. Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Christina, for organizing and promoting the event tonight, and thank you, Jason, for moderating. I feel like everyone here does. This was a beneficial exercise to allow our citizens to become more informed voters. In closing, please get out and vote. The City of Caribou makes it very easy to do so, whether you vote in person or by absentee ballot. This is a process by which you as citizens get the opportunity to elect the person or persons to best represent your vision and the direction you feel the community should be heading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. As has already been mentioned, I encourage those of you present in the room and those of you watching at home to get out and do your civic duty on Tuesday, November 7th and vote for one of the three of the seven councilors on the City Council ballot. I would like to also express my appreciation to forum organizer Christina Kane Gibson and to City Clerk Jane Farron for their assistance in putting tonight's forum on, and would invite those of you present in the room, there are some refreshments here, to continue the conversation with the candidates of any questions you might not have asked or have heard the answer to here, and to continue that discussion. And again, please get out and vote on November 7th. Have a great evening, everyone.
Very good. Good job.